to us. Well, Roy, your thoughts with Chris Anderson in the interview?
I thought he was very, very honest, and I empathise with him. Coaches really hurt when players leave, particularly when they don't give them an opportunity of last right of refusal. I mean, Mick left St George, but he did it in a very dignified. I remember the cup of coffee we had when he finally said, "Well, mate, I've got to go," but it hurts, and that came out in the interview.
Well, I mean, pay scale has gone absolutely through the roof. Canterbury players suggesting that all those amounts of money, they came in and spoke to the Canterbury club, the management committee, and said that they were offered enormous sums by the national coach.
Yeah, well, it was put up that you know, it came straight from the national coach's mouth. I think there was a fair bit of denial going on after that as well. But you know, it's been told to a lot of people that's come up. But I thought Bullfrog, not Bullfrog, it's Chris Anderson. I suppose we call him Tadpole, Little Bullfrog. he was very, very honest, and I thought that was a good point about it.
All right. Well, I think we might have repaired that line back to John Quayle. John, thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Graham.
John, you would have seen the story we just ran at the top of the show.
Well, firstly, Graham, I've got to say that I think your treatment of myself in that situation is quite unfair. You, in conjunction with your producer, Warren, I stayed back on Thursday night because I informed you I had a long-standing commitment for a trip to the country on Sunday and I would be unavailable.
Yes.
I stayed back and I must say missed my plane to Brisbane to do the interview. I've got to say from what I have just seen that, and from what our interview stated on Thursday night, I think was most unfair. I think for the start of this season, we have genuinely acted under that rule in good faith. On Monday, through information given to Mick Stone and Ron Massey, when they considered that they would not send the complaint to the tribunal, that was informed to Canberra. Canberra, because, as I admitted to you on Thursday night, had not received the memo, were given the wrong information. The events of the last 4 days did not allow me, that was from the Tuesday to the Thursday, to even view or look at the incident. When it came back from the lawyers that a genuine mistake had been made, and as I informed you on Thursday night, I acted immediately on that legal advice and lodged the complaint to the tribunal.
John, just there, can I ask you that they were aware of it from 2 o'clock on Monday? Are you saying that it wasn't serious enough to be acted upon for 4 days?
Well, Graham, I've got to say, who was aware of it at 2 o'clock on Monday?
You just heard Kevin Neal say that he made Tom Bellew aware of it, that their solicitors then contacted the Australian Rugby League, and the Rugby League said to them that it was still being drafted, the new rule that had been minuted 7 weeks prior at a board meeting.
Well, Graham, I don't accept that, and I'm sorry, and
those facts are wrong, John.
Graham, I have to accept all responsibilities for my office.
John, I'm sorry.
Graham,
are those facts wrong?
I showed you in good faith the memo, and I offered it to Warren through my office on Friday afternoon, that the memo that was drafted was sent to all board members because we didn't have a special meeting. When the board members then approved of that rule, that's when it should have gone to the clubs. It did not go to the clubs. Now, on Monday, we were all under the impression, and I've got no doubt genuinely, that the rule as the chief executives wanted that Ron Massey and Michael Stone, once they made the decision, that decision was final, was not the correct drafting of the rule.
But you cited Friday under Rule 12B, which gives you full power.
Graham, I cited on Thursday, as I told you, round about 6 o'clock on Thursday evening, once the lawyers had told me the drafting of the rule, as it was meant to be, that the final decision would be Ron Massey's and Mick Stone's, was not correct. And so I cited under Rule 12B, which I could have done on Tuesday, Monday, if I'd have been informed of that.
Why weren't you informed of a very serious affair?
Well, Graham, because I think for 9 weeks, and I think you all agree, that a lot of people have said that to have me involved in the tribunal process was eliminated as of this year. This is the first case, and I've got to say, I think we've all, and as I said from the start, we've been acting in good faith under that rule since the start of the year. And I've got to say, I've not on any occasions, and nor have I needed to, because the integrity of Mick Stone and Ron Massey, report any such incident to me other than this.
John, I've just got to ask you this question. The facts that we presented this morning, you are saying are wrong, is that right?
Graeme, the facts that you have presented in relation to the way the rule was drafted and the timing of it, I genuinely believe you are wrong.
And the way the affair is unfolded, you say that is wrong?
Oh, no, definitely not. I think the way the affair has unfolded is totally correct. I think Canberra, if they were given the wrong information on Monday by my office, have a genuine reason to have acted the way they did. As I said to you both on Thursday night, I regret that I did not act earlier. That is my responsibility as Chief Executive. When I acted, I thought that I'd rectified the problem. It seems from your side of it, I've certainly not acted correctly. I think I apologise to you, and if I personally rung Tim Sheens on Thursday afternoon and asked him a number of questions, when he told me he felt that Canberra were given a denial of natural justice and the wrong information, it was then that I accepted the advice of the lawyers that the rule may have been interpreted wrong and acted.
Johnny,
if I am to be criticised as I just was by you, I think that's wrong.
John, you also told me on Thursday night that you were under threat of a Supreme Court writ.
Exactly. That came...
Now, are you saying that you didn't act until there was a Supreme Court writ?
No, the Supreme Court writ, Graeme, I was informed by the lawyers that the Canberra lawyers were going to lodge in the court on Friday. Now, why would I could have taken the option of waited and let the law interpret it, the rule. I did not do that. I chose to act under a rule that is still there, giving the Chief Executive of the League the opportunity to say.
John, your own tribunal was not even aware of the rule change on Monday, and now you have enacted a rule that countermands the power that they were supposed to have the final say. So, in other words, you put into place a rule that now has no confidence in the two members who refused to sign.
That's where your interpretation of it, Graeme, is totally wrong. You are saying the tribunal, or you're talking about Mick Stone...
And Ron Massey.
Mick Stone and Ron Massey have acted for 9 weeks under the impression of the rule.
That they have final say?
Sorry?
That they have final say.
I think we all were under the impression, Graeme, that Ron Massey and Mick Stone had the final say.
Why did they tell, personally, Tim Sheens that he could cite up till 5 o'clock?
Because under the rule, the words 5 o'clock are still within it. And Graeme, look, please, it's no use us getting bogged down in the interpretation of a drafting of the rule. Please, in situations like this, and as I said, if the League office and myself personally has to take responsibility for interpretation of a legal point, surely we've got that right. I'm saying to you, and as I said Thursday night, I apologise to anyone that I have caused inconvenience for the interpretation of a rule. But I think in all times I've acted in good faith, as I did on Thursday afternoon, when I considered a genuine mistake had been made. I could have, Graeme, allowed Canberra to take the issue to the court for a rule interpretation.
John, just one final question then. Once it was known that the rule wasn't in place, and there had been, which you can't deny, a major administrative bungle, who was responsible for not treating this in the early hours of Monday as a serious affair?
Graeme, as I've done in my time as Chief Executive, I will take full responsibility for any bungle, as you said, that occurs in my office. As I said to you on Thursday night, if you can't accept the turmoil of which the League has been under in the last few months on an issue that was not brought to my attention as quick as it should have been, well, then I take full responsibility of that, and I will do so.
John, we appreciate you ringing in this morning.
Thank you, Graeme.
John Quayle. Well, Roy?
Well, I'm glad that he called in. I'm glad that he attempted to clear it up. It shows that Channel 7 are willing to give somebody else the other side of
Right.
It's up to the public out there to make up their mind whether you're right or he's right.
Okay. All right, stay with us. We cross live to the Queensland camp after this break for a preview to Origin 2. Graeme Richardson is known to most of us as a former Labor cabinet minister and a major influence on political power in this country. But now he is Kerry Packer's right-hand man in the battle for rugby league. Graeme Richardson has been inside the ARL bunker from day one, and this morning he goes head-to-head with Roy Masters.
Thanks for coming on the show, Graeme.
Pleasure, Roy.
You said on the Four Corners show that the amount of money spent by News Limited, Foxtel, Channel 9, the Australian Rugby League will never, ever be repaid.
Correct.
Well, why spend it?
Well, it's all about pay television in Australia. The rollouts are going out from Optus Vision and from Foxtel. You've got to have a sports package to sign people up. At the moment, Optus Vision has got the AFL, the Olympics, and the ARL. And Foxtel's got to have something, and so what it's done, instead of trying to do a deal, is tried to buy the ARL.
And in the process, has done what?
Well, in the process, I think is basically just disrupting all of us. I mean, I watched your show today. All you're talking about is doom and gloom. I used to watch this show and have fun. And it's the same for everybody. We went to football. I mean, all we do now is talk about the war.
But, I mean, you could understand from some point of view, News Limited are making that we wouldn't have all of this problem. We'd be able to go to the negotiating table, but we can't because Channel 9 run rugby league. That's what they're saying.
Well, they've got to say it. I mean, I'd say it if I was them too, but that wouldn't make it true. And, I mean, we're not running rugby league. We don't try to even. We're not even in the hunt of running rugby league. I mean, they want to set up a Super League, which has got half the directors of the board come straight from News Limited. There is actually one Channel 9 person on the ARL board. One, but only one.
But every television shot we see, you are in the boardroom, sitting around the table. I mean, surely you've got an enormous input into the ARL tactics.
Well, I've certainly been helping him out now for the last 8 or 9 weeks while I've been under siege. I mean, these are blokes who they're running a football code. All of a sudden, there's a takeover bid from one of the biggest businessmen in the world. Well, they're obviously going to need some help, and for better or for worse, I've been one of those helping.
But surely they've got some point. I mean, News Limited, they're saying that there are too many Sydney clubs. Don't you think there are too many Sydney clubs?
I think a lot of people think there are too many Sydney clubs, but I suggest the way out of it is not to abolish 7 of them overnight, disenfranchise millions of fans just in one hit, and then pretend people are still going to run around and watch rugby league, because they're not. I mean, I followed St George all my life. There's hundreds of thousands like me who did that, and there's hundreds of thousands following Balmain, or lots of clubs, you know. You don't just wipe them out overnight. That way you just alienate all the fans. No one wants to do that.
Well, how could it have been better done?
Well, over the course of the next few years, you're going to see a 2-tiered competition for a few years. I think we all should have a look at that, see how it goes. And then after we've had a look at that, maybe some of those clubs will be talking to each other, actually some are now, about what their future might be. But you'll need to encourage clubs to do it with some sort of a financial incentive package. You'll need to have fans going along with it. You won't just decide in some business boardroom somewhere that you're going to wipe out 3/4 of the teams in Sydney. It won't work.
But it seems as though they're wider apart than they've ever been before, and the ARL have sort of widened the gap by this rescue package to clubs. They are actually spending ARL accumulated reserves of $12 million on the ARL clubs, and they're not spending them at all on the clubs like Canterbury who have helped develop those reserves.
Yeah, but you say they've helped develop those reserves, and that's probably true, but let's look at what's happened. You know, you're sitting there in a peaceful valley of rugby league. Things are prosperous, they're going along well. All of a sudden there are rebels on the hills lobbing shells into the middle of you, and you're ducking and dying. And when you're doing that, I've just never heard of any group that arms the rebels, Roy. I mean, if you go back to it, Abraham Lincoln never gave the Confederacy a gun, did he? I mean, it wouldn't have been too smart.
Well, no, he didn't, but they would say that they needed to take arms because the situation had become intolerable. That's what the News Limited people are saying, the Super League people.
It wasn't too intolerable when 20 of them signed loyalty contracts in February. We're only going to go back 3 months to when all 20 clubs signed it. They were all getting up and speaking in support of it. And now you say that it's intolerable? Well, why wasn't anyone saying it was intolerable then?
All right, now, we've got to confront you with this. I mean, here is a quote from the Prime Minister of Australia. He is saying that in reference to you,
yep,
a paid employee of Mr Packer trying to represent himself as the Labor Party. I mean, a lot of credibility went down the drain. Graeme has taken his 30 pieces of silver, let him have them, but don't give advice to me. What's your response to that?
Well, I had the temerity to criticise Paul Keating, and he doesn't actually like criticism a whole lot. And he has responded in his typically understated way and had a go at me for going to work for Kerry Packer. But Paul, I've known Paul for 25 years. We have fights like this all the time. It's not terribly unusual.
But the way that the remarks have been interpreted by the public and certainly by the rugby league community, that you've taken your 30 pieces of silver to fight on this rugby league issue.
Oh, no, that's all said actually about me criticising him over the Canberra by-election result. I went on the Sunday program and it was the worst result Labor Party's had since 1947, and I said so, and he didn't like it. It had nothing to do with rugby league.
But I know that, but does it still hold up, his comment? Does it hold up?
No, I mean, I don't understand how. I've followed rugby league all my life. I've been, as I said, a St George follower all my life, which was when I first met you. I mean, I want to keep following my team. I want to help my team. Why would I suddenly want to turn against?
Well, I'll support you on that, because I've seen you on the hill when I coached St George, and you didn't join the Silvers in the private boxes. But if you went back there and you stood up there on the hill and you looked down on them, how would the panorama of rugby league look at the moment?
Well, the panorama looks pretty sick. I mean, as I said, listening to your show today, there's just so much gloom and doom about it. And I think we all ought to remember what happened to baseball in America. They had 2 seasons of strife, and now no one goes anymore. So I just really worry about where rugby league will be in a couple of years, because people will find something else to do.
Who's going to win?
Well, I think you've got to say the ARL are in front, and I have no doubt that we're going to win the court case. So there's not going to be a Super League next year, and I believe we'll be okay. But the question is, what do you win? What's left when you win? What I really worry about is making sure we've still got a game we all love. And at the moment, I think that's in doubt.
Thank you very much for your time, Graeme.
Okay, thanks, Rod.
Thank you. Let's take you back up north now in our Brisbane studios to the Chief Executive of Super League, Mr. John Ribot. John, thanks for joining us.
Nice to be in the program, Graeme.
John, I know you've been watching this morning. How have you viewed the events of this week?
Well, I think it has been disappointing, and especially with the players, and listening to Chris, and I know how emotional, and this whole issue, I know from Chris Anderson's, when we put this whole proposal up, it was very important that we spoke to the coaches. They certainly shared in the vision of what we were trying to do, because they believed it was going to be good for rugby league. What happened last week, we've just seen some players now, because of some financial inducements, have elected to go overboard, and I think the loyalty factor there is what the ARL have been preaching for the last few months, is now they've asked their members, as in the original ARL contracted players, to show loyalty to them. We have players that have been involved with us, and because of some monies they've paid them, they've elected to go to the ARL. And they've turned their back on their players. So I think that's terribly disappointing from the players' point of view.
Okay, but I mean, to be fair, I mean, the ARL said that you started this, the clubs broke loyalty agreements. Why aren't you wrong?
Well, from a loyalty, let's go through the agreements we broke. You say we broke it. We haven't broken anything. From our point of view, if a player wanted to come and talk to us because he believed what was offered to him no longer could be adhered to, we said to them, would you go and get some independent legal advice? If that advice comes back that we can do business, we'd like to talk to you. And things like, if they were saying at the time, which has been made very public, about we're a $2 company, we won't pay, or your representative football can come through the ARL, you won't be able to play representative football. Quite clearly, Graeme, that wasn't going to happen. So if the player got his independent legal advice and had said that, and they believed he was open for negotiations, quite free to go and negotiate a new contract, we then spoke to some players. I must say, Graeme, in some cases we believed that players didn't have a case from their advice that came back, so we suggested to that player they should stay and honour their ARL contract.
But John, isn't there no difference between what Super League did with the Penrith players who'd signed ARL contracts and what the ARL have done with the Canterbury players who signed Super League contracts?
Yeah, Roy, that's what I just tried to explain, is that let's use the case of the Penrith players. Some of those players signed the front and back page, didn't get to see the content of the contract. Some of those players were offered the opportunity to play representative football. That clearly can't happen anymore. They're also told it's a $2 company, they won't pay you. They're also told, and even Graeme Richardson elaborated again this morning, he says, this thing isn't going to be up and running. It's not going to happen. It certainly won't happen in 1996. That's not our belief. I think that they can't come out and make those accusations without, now it's going to court for a court to make that finding. Then that assertion can be made either true or false.
John, just on Graeme Richardson, he suggested that neither Foxtel or News Limited or Optus Vision, the ARL, would be able to get their money back, not in his generation anyway. He said that on Four Corners the other night. What's your understanding about News Limited's situation?
Michael, that's from our point of view. From day one, we spoke to the players. We spoke about the vision. You know, we've been criticised about the vision, but to sell this whole thing, before we spoke about dollars, we had to go to the players and talk about the working condition, where rugby league's going.
But John, there's a business plan.
There is Michael, there is a business plan on this whole thing. Players realise that. What we want to do is we can pay the players, and when it comes up to renegotiate their contracts, we'd like to think we can pay them more. Then the spectators going to the game's going to be so much healthier than what it is now. The facts are, this league loses $20 million. The football club loses $20 million a year. The TV ratings are down. The gate receipts are down. Now they're talking about, you know, clubs staying alive with 2,000 and 3,000 people going to their games. That can't help it. In John Quayle and the board's own admission, in 1998, they're going to rationalise the game and cut clubs out. What we did from day one was say, we want everybody and every club to be a shareholder in this so rugby league can foster. This is good for rugby league. At some stage, some clubs are going to have to look at where they sit. They can be a shareholder in this and they can share in the Super League concept. The St George's, the Parramatta's, the West, they all stay alive. We try and bolster the Sydney competition so everybody's better off.
John, why won't you release the details of your business plan if you've got so much confidence in it?
Well, I think from our point of view, obviously, Roy, we've released that to our member clubs, and I've said that I've said publicly before that selling this to the clubs has been very easy. Once they sit down and see what we're all about and how this is all going to work, that's something we believe we should just, at this stage, keep it between the clubs and ourselves. I think down the track, Roy, your comments are quite valid, that we should put the business plan and lay it on the table so everybody can have a look at it. What's happening at the moment, Roy, everything they're saying, there's all these cheap shots going around, and even now we're working on emotion. It's become very personal, which is very unfortunate. All those things, no one could rationally sit down and go through a business plan at the moment because all we do is confuse the public. So
John,
the clubs know what we're about, and we're
John,
committed to that. Sorry.
February the 6th, when the Brisbane Broncos were in there, the Sydney Bulldogs, all the clubs were in there, you voted on a loyalty agreement. Why didn't you stand up on February the 6th and say to the league that we're not signing the loyalty agreement?
Graeme, again, that was a very emotional time, and at that time, even before they asked everybody to sign that loyalty agreement, which had to be signed over a 24-hour period, we were put under enormous pressure. There was clubs calling for our expulsion. So, Graeme, from our point of view, what do I do to our supporters? And I'm putting my old Bronco hat on here. Our supporters, our sponsors. Do I go back and say I wouldn't sign that loyalty agreement? So they were calling for immediate expulsion out of the competition. They've kicked us out of the competition. We have then stuck there with 3 or 4 million. We can't pay the players. We can't put a football game on. If they talk about duress, that's duress. You had two choices: either sign the loyalty agreement. And I must say, from the Broncos' point of view, the loyalty agreement we didn't agree with when we put in escrow. So they have never signed the original loyalty agreement. That's facts. So from Broncos' point of view, we didn't believe in that. We didn't sign that. It's in escrow because we're debating some points.
Mr. Ribot.
Agro, how are you?
It's Agro. I've been brought in to lighten the discussion. Now, don't be scared of me, Mr. Ribot, although I did prefer you with a moustache.
Thanks, Agro. I love your raggy head too.
Thanks a lot. I just wanted to ask you about, you know, you're saying about crowds not going to games anymore, but with the Crushers, they're getting 20,000 a game. Don't you think they should be either included or applauded, one of the two?
Yeah, Agro, I think the situation with the Crushers too is, and we sat down and we spoke with them, there's a lot of speculation up here that they should come into the competition, is that from their point of view, they certainly wanted some seeding capital, and they needed some extra income because of their gate receipts weren't as high as what they anticipated. So it's all right to get big crowd numbers if you give away a lot of tickets, and I understand that to give people the experience, but from a bottom line point of view in dollars, that they haven't achieved what they had budgeted for. So when we'd spoken to the Crushers, they needed some seeding capital. That made it very difficult for us because then we'd have to go back, if they asked for $3 million, we'd have to give that to every other club. So there'd be another $30 million, and back to the business plan, we couldn't afford to do that.
Now, Mr. Ribot, just lighten up. Well, everyone's too serious. Are you going to take Wally's statue out to ANZ Stadium?
We'd love to take Wally's statue out to ANZ. And Wally knows he's always welcome at anywhere the Broncos